So let's jump into it. Let's start by looking at the IT department versus the cybersecurity department in an organization. So obviously, at some smaller organizations, IT and cyber may be represented by the same personnel. But today we're looking at organizations where this is more of a separation of duties. So where are these two departments? Where are their missions in sync with each other? And then where do they differ in terms of their priorities and philosophies, particularly when it comes to the concept of vulnerability assessment and management across your network?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think when they talk about being in sync, right, I think the IT group and the security group all want the same thing, which is a system that's operating safely and securely. Because IT people want things to be run securely, because if it's not, that means that they could have downtime. Um, the security people want uptime because it means that their controls and everything are working in supporting the business and getting things done. So from an alignment perspective, if you look at it in that lens, I really think that, all of IT, which can include security in that regard, we are in alignment. We want systems that are operational, that they're available and secure all at the same time. Where things start to diverge is when things break down. So there's a great article I read several weeks ago about complex systems and how complex systems fail. And if you think back to when I started with IT, there were a handful of systems, or maybe you could even just put your finger on the server that's running, and you can't really do that anymore because things are virtual, things are abstracted, things are in the cloud. There's microservices. I mean, it's just exploded in growth, the amount of systems we maintain. And so, an interesting exercise, if you're really looking to understand the complexity of a process or the complexity of a system, is go talk to an architect or a developer in your firm and say, hey, can you explain to me how, this type of a transaction works? Like, for example, if you're in the retail space, can you explain to me how we go from a shopping cart that has all of the all the things you're buying included in it, to payment, to shipping, and all that, like that process. And what I think you're going to find is that there are a combination of modern and legacy systems. There are like almost too many components to start naming. So they say, hey, let's go over to the whiteboard. And then they're going to start, pulling out all the markers, or virtual whiteboard as it is right now. You're going to find that there's going to be different colors, right? Because we'll say, well, let me do this flow in this color, so you can sort of see how that differs from this flow or this microservice. So when something breaks, there is this sort of like, well, let's either, first of all, IT people in some respects, and I started my career as one, so I don't feel bad about saying this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? If the system is running, please don't touch it, because I know that if I do something to it, that creates a change, which could then impact the uptime and security of that system. So don't touch anything. Unfortunately, life kind of has a way, vulnerabilities kind of have a way of popping up. And so once a vulnerability is present, we do need to take action against that system to fix it. But that can introduce risk, and it can introduce a lot of things that are negative. So when you have a system downtime or something happens after a patch, usually the first reaction is roll back the patch. Let's go back to a known good state before we reintroduce something back into it. So I think that's really where things sort of differ on the IT side. On the security side, where they'll differ is if security detects something that looks funny, something that looks odd, whether it's, hey, we've seen a traffic spike in a place we don't see it, or there's been 50 logins that happen in the last 5 minutes, and our normal login rate is 3 every 5 minutes. The instinct of security people is shut it down. Like, let's stop whatever bleed is happening right now, cancel access to the system until we can figure out what's going on, and then reintroduce it. So that solves that security breach potential for getting worse problem, but then IT is affected because it's their uptime that is now it's not happening. And so the phone calls happen every way, right? System's down, I can't access the system, and going back and forth. Let's revert back, let's shut it down, figure out what's going on. I think the critical thing in these complex systems is having really solid documentation and having experts that understand how they work. They may not know the whole system, but they can understand their parts and the handoffs. And then really taking a solid approach of problem discovery, framing, and solving, so that you are taking a ready, aim, fire approach as opposed to a ready, fire, aim approach. Ready, fire, aim works great when you can steer your ordnance, but most companies can't do that. So, once you start taking action, that can have an adverse effect on the outcome of the system unless you're taking the right action.